Think about what you ate today. Now imagine eating all of it raw. No heat, no processing, no cooking of any kind, just raw meat, raw tubers, raw everything. Now calculate how long it would take you to chew through enough raw food to actually sustain yourself for a full day. Scientists have done that calculation. The answer is roughly 9 hours of chewing every single day, just to stay alive. That is the world your ancestors lived in before fire, and it is the world that would have continued without it. But 9 hours of chewing is not just an inconvenience. It is a ceiling, a hard biological ceiling on everything your brain could do, everything your body could become, and everything your species could build, because those 9 hours had to come from somewhere. And the time they came from was the time that, in a world with fire, became something else entirely. Let's start with what fire actually changed, because the answer is not what most people assume. The common answer is warmth, protection from predators, light in the dark. All of those things are true, all of them mattered, but they are not the deepest change fire produced. The deepest change was in the body itself. And the scientist who first put that argument together spent decades being told he was wrong. In 1999, a primatologist named Richard Wrangham at Harvard published a theory that reframed human evolution entirely. He called it the cooking hypothesis. His argument was simple and radical in equal measure. He said that what separated Homo sapiens from every other primate was not tools, not language, not social complexity in the abstract. It was cooking. The moment our ancestors began systematically applying heat to food, he argued, everything changed. Not gradually, not over millions of years, rapidly, measurably, in the fossil record. And the fossil record agreed with him. At roughly the same point in human prehistory where evidence of controlled fire begins appearing consistently, something strange starts happening to the human skull. The jaw gets smaller, the teeth get smaller, the gut gets smaller, the face flattens, and the brain case gets dramatically larger. All of these changes happening within the same geological window, all of them pointing to the same cause. Here is why. Raw food is extraordinarily difficult to digest. A chimpanzee eating raw plants and raw meat extracts calories from that food at a rate that requires an enormous digestive system, long intestines, large stomach, massive jaw muscles anchored to a pronounced sagittal crest on the skull. The whole body organized around the problem of processing raw food efficiently enough to survive. That is not a flaw in chimpanzee biology. It is the correct solution to the problem every primate faced before fire. Cooking changes the problem entirely. Heat breaks down the cell walls of plant matter before it enters the body. It denatures proteins in meat, making them dramatically easier to digest. It kills pathogens. It increases the caloric yield of almost every food it touches. A cooked sweet potato provides nearly twice the usable calories of a raw one. A cooked piece of meat is digested in a fraction of the time of a raw one. The body suddenly does not need the enormous digestive infrastructure it previously required. And evolution, which rewards efficiency ruthlessly, began redirecting those resources. The gut shrank, the jaw shrank, the skull ridge that anchored massive chewing muscles disappeared, and the calories and energy that had previously gone into running an enormous digestive system went somewhere else instead. They went into the brain. The human brain is the most metabolically expensive organ in the body. It consumes roughly 20% of your total caloric intake despite representing only 2% of your body weight. Running a brain that large required a caloric surplus that raw food simply could not reliably produce. Cooking produced that surplus, and the brain grew to fill it, not over millions of years. In evolutionary terms, rapidly. The brain of Homo erectus, the first human ancestor to use fire consistently, is significantly larger than the brain of the Australopithecines that preceded it. The trajectory is not subtle, but cooking was not the only thing fire changed. It changed the night. Before fire, darkness was a death sentence. Your ancestors had terrible night vision compared to the predators that hunted them. Leopards, hyenas, wild dogs, all of them could see perfectly in conditions that left humans completely blind. When the sun went down, you climbed a tree or found a sheltered spot and you stayed completely still. Moving at night meant becoming food. The useful day ended at sunset. Full stop. Fire changed that equation overnight. Literally. A campfire creates a circle of safety. Predators will not approach it. And inside that circle, your ancestors suddenly had something they had never had before. Time. 2 to 4 hours of usable time every evening that had simply not existed before fire. Time that did not need to be spent chewing. Time that did not need to be spent hiding. Time that was, for the first time in the history of the species, genuinely free. And what did they do with it? Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years studying the Kungsan of of the Kalahari, one of the last groups on Earth still living something close to the original human lifestyle. She recorded thousands of hours of conversation. During the day, roughly 80% of those conversations were practical. Who is hunting where? Which plants are ready? Logistics. During the night around the fire, 81% of conversations were stories, myths, tales of people in distant places. Jokes. The entire character of human communication shifted when the sun went down and the fire came up. Weisner argued that this is where human culture was born, not in the daylight world of practical survival, around the fire, in the extra hours that fire created. The campfire was the original classroom, the original theater, the original church. It was where humans learned to imagine things that did not exist yet, where knowledge was transmitted from elders to children in the form of stories that were easier to remember than instructions, where the social bonds that made large-scale human cooperation possible were forged and maintained night after night across hundreds of thousands of years. Without fire, none of that happens. The night remains a threat to be survived rather than a resource to be used. The stories are never told. The knowledge is never transmitted in the same way. The social bonds that held groups together through crisis and famine, and the long darkness of Ice Age, winters are never as strong. And here is what that world actually looks like. It looks like a chimpanzee. That is not an insult. It is a precise description of where humanity stays without fire. Chimpanzees are intelligent, remarkably so. They use tools. They have social hierarchies. They form coalitions and alliances. They grieve their dead. They are our closest living relatives, and they share nearly 99% of our DNA. But their knowledge dies with them. Each generation starts almost exactly where the last one did. There is no campfire around which the elders pass what they learned to children who will carry it forward. There is no 2 hours of story every evening building a shared understanding of the world that extends beyond what any individual can personally observe. Without fire, humans do not build a slower or simpler version of civilization. They do not get there eventually, they stay exactly where every other primate stayed. Intelligent, social, remarkable, and completely unable to accumulate the kind of knowledge across generations that eventually produces language, agriculture, cities, and everything that followed. The entire chain of human development runs through that first controlled flame, not through genius, not through some exceptional cognitive leap that separated humans from every other animal. Through the decision to apply heat to food and spend the freed time sitting together in the dark, telling each other what they knew. Everything humans have ever built is downstream of that fire. Every book, every city, every piece of music, every scientific discovery, every conversation you have ever had that meant something, every relationship that shaped you, every idea that changed how you understood the world. All of it traces back to a campfire in the dark, and the people sitting around that fire had no idea what they were starting. They were just warm,